Welcome, everyone, to this new episode of My Take Show. We're really glad that you have tuned in to join in our conversation. My name is Tutu, and I'm here with my girlfriends. Ladies, say hi.
Hey everyone, good to see you, everyone.
Hi.
My Take is a forum where we ladies hang out, unwind, and chat about the happenings around us while lending our voices to some of the social issues in the world today. Our goal is to promote a culture of love and compassion while keeping things real with a foundation of truth and candor, using the Bible as our guide. In this season, we are tackling the challenges associated with living in a fallen world. The overall theme of this season is when life happens. We'll be speaking with two inspirational guests today as they share how they handle life's challenges with grace and hope, and how they continue to inspire the youth in their area of specialization. So today, welcome. We'll be discussing a topic that is dear to my heart and to the heart of my girlfriends. We'll be talking with dealing with the breakdown of the school system. How do we deal with the school system working against parents from a standpoint of faith? And we have two guests today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We have Miss Suzette Thom and Miss Susie Chakwa. So, ladies, please introduce yourself. I'll start with Miss Susie Thom.
Thank you so much, Tutu, and to the panelists and Miss Susie and everyone around the world and the globe that are with us today. Thank you for having this meaningful discussion. It's so imperative and timely as we prepare to go back to school. So my name is Suzette Thom. I've been a servant of the public in education for over half my adult life. I innately come from a long line of teachers and school administrators from both sides of my family. And in fact, my father was my first teacher. And as the African proverb states, one father equals 100 teachers. So Mr. James Thom has been holding it down, and to this day, he's my mentor, advisor, and even at times my ATM. Just kidding. But as we delve into this important topic today, I look forward to looking at it from a lens of community, a lens of understanding, and opportunities to help build and boost our family systems and our school systems. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Go ahead, Miss Susie. Miss Susie, can you hear me?
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. My name is Susie. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm Susie. I am an assistant principal. I'm a teacher. I'm a mentor. I work with teenagers in the United Kingdom. I'm a high school teacher. So yeah, this is a topic that is really close to my heart. And so I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. And as we talk through these issues, we encourage our viewers to please feel free to lean into the conversation, add your comments, your observations. And if you do have questions, please feel free to add your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chats. Thank you. So, I mean, lately it seems, there's a new there are different controversies erupting in our public school systems, especially. And like the Bible says, if the foundation of a godly society is destroyed, what can the righteous do? The public school system is where most kids are trained, they grow up, and it serves as a foundation of life for our children. But it seems there's so much going on in the public school today. And so we'll be focusing on public school education, not because there's nothing to say about private schools, but since the public schools is where we have more kids, our focus will be there today. So I know, Ms. Suzette Tom, you already talked about your background in public education. I'll just go straight and ask this question that today there's been a few challenges ranging from, we have a lot of students with learning disabilities and mental health issues among kids. We have teacher shortages. There's decline in school safety. We know about shootings going on, and just dealing with, mental health issues. We have emerging technologies, which are good, but then we're also seeing the negative sides of some of these emerging technologies like GPT. We have, lying chat boxes, deep fakes, and just all kinds of things going on. What are your thoughts about these issues, and how are they being addressed in the public school?
Thank you, Tutu. That's a great question. And these socio and political and economic issues, sadly, were happening pre-pandemic. I think we were tuned out a little bit to it, and we were just free-flowing through our Barbie land of make-believe. The kids got on the bus and went to school, they got dropped off, and we kept it moving, right? We were working, we were going to school, doing other things. We back and forth to sports practices and even our own yoga classes. But what the pandemic did was blow the lid off of these societal issues. And thus they just trickle down like, water from the roof through your gutters down to the ground. And they just trickle down to the school and the recreation center, so to speak. Unfortunately, the proliferation of and the desensitization of language, of negative visual images on repeat cycle, or even the adults and kids are doom scrolling, as they call it. And even more importantly, our kids, our young people saw how adults really interact. And so the reality of it is, and I think we can agree, right, is that in this day and age, we know that Sally's family is different than ours. We hear and see that Josh now wants to be called Jessica. It's a fact. Mrs. Johnson's third period English class has their third substitute teacher for the third day in a row. Our larger systems in Florida, the College Board, have eliminated AP psychology from the public schools. And here's some breaking news in case anybody didn't know. As slaves, they were just, indentured servants, or, DeSantis is saying that they learned valuable skills working on the plantation. So how do we as a family, as a community, address these issues. And I like to share 3 points. Number one is that we as a community develop clear communication within this system, right? We're all part of a system, whether it's a school system, healthcare system, political system. So as a family, being clear about what we want, being clear about why we want it, and what are we going to do and how are we going to go about to achieve our goals within the system. Number two, in light of these social concerns, how can we build up the family community, right? I mean, the family community has changed, the dynamics have changed over our traditional systems that we've come to know. And so in whatever way or shape that looks like, start having those conversations within ourselves when we're going to the grocery store, when we're dropping and picking up from fall practices. What have you heard? What do you know? I had an opportunity to take my nieces the other day to see Barbie, and I had my own, misconceived notions and things of that sort. But to, bring them into the conversation and tap into their experiences, I think is very relevant in building the family. And then finally, creating cohesive external communities. If as a family you can't make it to the PTA meeting or go to the back to school night, send a representative, catch what's happening online at the Board of Ed meetings. And it's been my experience as a school administrator, athletic administrator, college and high school coach, that this is what I know. If nothing else, to put on your back to school list this year within this system is make it an Amazon high priority, okay? Amazon Prime purchase. As a family, as soon as your young person walks out that door, number one, fortify them in faith. Number two, make sure they know whose name and image they represent. And finally, that their likeness is a beam of light, representing the family, representing family values and expectations. So I think as the kids are equipped, coming back, you hit the ground running, and we then begin to develop an understanding of what's happening.
Wow.
Wow, that
was fact. The last part I think made me smile because there's a phrase that we use a lot where we come from Nigeria that says, whenever you send your kids off, especially to college, they'll say, remember the child of who you are, or remember the name that you bear. So when you said that part, that was interesting. Really make sure that wherever you go, you're carrying the family's name and you're representing the family. Yeah.
I wanted to chime into what you said, that picking something you said is that we as parents, I noticed that a lot of times we're naive. We don't know exactly what is being done or what is going on. We just drop our children off and send them a merry way. But I think from what you're saying, we need to be involved. Should be a strong priority for us. If we can't be there, send a representative. Make sure we are intentionally involved in knowing what is going on. And I think a lot of conversations I've been having with a lot of parents, a lot of them are clueless as to what is going on. And it's
indeed, and they're pulled in so many different directions, right? My mother passed when we were younger, so my father had to raise 4 children, but he didn't do it by himself, right? We had aunties and uncles. Granny came and stayed with us. We were involved, externally, a very large extended family. And I think, I do know that it makes a difference in the child when they know that Auntie Sue can pop up at any time, or Mrs. So-and-so next door is going to take you to practice and then still report back to what happened. The internet and our advancements in society, or in technology rather, have made us more individualized. And this is a prime opportunity for us to go back to circling the wagons and becoming more of the village without the competitiveness of it, right? It's more to build the child, build their autonomy and strength when they do go out into the world. And so I'd be interested to hear other experiences, especially in Kenya, what's happening there with.
Yes. So, Susie, would like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Suzette was saying there in terms of the challenges. I think they are global. So although I'm Kenyan, I work in the UK, in London, and I've been in inner city schools for all my career. And part of the reasons why I think it's a global problem is because of the internet. So the internet has made everybody become one in a lot of ways. So we do have similar challenges in the African schooling system, so to speak. But the one thing that I would say is that a lot of the things that we are discussing are things that are what we live with today. So like Suzette has said, you know, the pandemic came and then it brought to the forefront a lot of other things. And what that has forced us to do, for example, in the African family traditionally, is to look at, say, mental health and actually agree that those things happen, that the mental health is actually an issue within our African family setup. Because sometimes, you know, it's been in the past where people don't quite accept that mental health is part of health, you know, and it is an actual issue that we need to be addressing. When you look at the internet and internet safety, when you look at schools and where they're headed, then you realize that we have to look at our curriculum, looking at what can we do to make sure that our teachers are trained to deal with some of these issue is both. Can you hear me? Yeah, so it's an advantage and a disadvantage in that the advantage is we are reaping the benefits of the day-to-day modern schooling and modern family, but we also need to make sure that our traditional values are still in place. So for me, the way we address this is looking at family, you know, our values. What are they like? Do our children actually know the values that we hold as either as an African or as a family or as a child of God? Do we know what our children are getting at home? Because the minute you have those value systems within your child, it's very hard for the world to come and interfere with that system because it's already there. So if I look at, for example, myself, I teach in the United Kingdom, but sometimes, a lot of times, I'll tell my students, I'm like, look, I'm African, you know, and part of my value system is that when, you know, adults are speaking, you need to be listening, and then I will listen to you. So I still tap into my value system, and then I allow them to learn about respect and to understand who they are within that context. But the other thing I think that is really key is looking at you know, parental engagement that has been said before, because one of the most frustrating things that I find as a pastoral leader, because I'm assistant principal for pastoral. So when I look at behavior, I look at safeguarding, it's the lack of parental engagement. So a child will come and they'll say, I'm being bullied. Cyberbullying is a major issue. And then you tell the parent, and the parent sort of doesn't accept that their child is on the phone at 1 a.m. at night. But then these children are showing you the evidence of a conversation that they're having at that time. So that parental engagement whereby you're in touch with your teacher, your child's teacher, especially the pastoral heads of your child. So that might be the tutor, it might be the career person, it might be the class teacher, it might be the head of year. Those, I always say, we need them on speed dial. The way you have a speed dial for your doctor or your lawyer, you need that speed dial to the person who sees your child every day, because that's a person who sees your child for up to 8 hours when they're awake. But when they come home, they're asleep most of the time. So you need that co-parenting happening between home and school. So I think parental engagement is really key. We want to hear from parents. We want you to come and ask questions. If you don't understand what's going on, come. We will answer the questions. We want to work with you. So I think those are the two I'd say: value system at home and parental engagement.
I really love what Susie said. And when, you actually brought up something, I know that, I'm not trying to compare, but as my kids, started off school in the American school system. When they were obviously younger, they first went some private nurseries, and then we, transitioned where we're living, and they went to the local public school, which is a pretty good school, but I do remember, we had very large class sizes, and but we had a lot of parent engagement days we could go in, but some were in middle school, others were in elementary school when we transitioned and moved to the UK. So I actually was able to experience them in schools in both places. I think one of the first things that caught my attention where we lived, you had what they called small schools and big schools. And our small school was a total of, I think, maybe 15 children in one class. And that was the whole of maybe year 4, just 15. I was stunned, but it gave that intimacy. But when you go to the larger school, and especially in secondary school, which is our middle school / high school, I was very surprised when I was also hearing that phrase. The first time they were like, you have to go to the pastoral care. I found it amazing that they used that word. And in most UK schools, that's what they call it. And it's where you have your, kind of like your guidance counselor. You have the teachers that are in your form teachers. And that's where, to Susie's point, they provide that guidance, that support. I know different schools still have their own issues, but I always thought that was a very important part. Several times they've reached out to us when they have, multiple, infractions, for not doing something right, or they notice they're struggling with certain education. You get a call from someone on the pastoral care team. And I felt that word was important because the school was saying we would help you shepherd and grow your kids and stay in communication. But Susie makes a great point that the busyness of life at times for us too as parents has probably hindered that engagement. And sorry to just give this example. I just saw something my husband shared with me today, and there was this 16-year-old boy who was in court. This just happened a couple of days ago. Well, the case was a couple of days ago, but they were preparing for GCSEs, and apparently he said to his, he wanted to have some friends over for a sleepover because they were going to study and they'll sleep over. So apparently in the middle of the night, the father just went in to check up on, this is the story that was said on the internet, so I don't know how to, I don't have all the facts, but the father went to check, and the boy and his 2 friends having a sleepover were watching pornography. So the father was horrified, African father, furious, and was like, is this what you're supposed to be studying, blah, 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 and, bit the boy with a belt. And the boy was screaming, was upset, and his friends were horrified, and the friends called the cops, they called the police. And the police came and took the boy out of the home and took everybody out of the home. And the case went to court. And the boy was frustrated and said, his father has been trying to get him to study medicine, doesn't want to study medicine. So he gets angry when he doesn't get the right grades and he beats him up. But the long and short, although he's 16, he's not yet an adult, and they've taken the boy out of the home. And specifically in the UK, there's been a lot of that. And I do apologize, Tutu. I hope I'm not taking you out. But I just wanted to state the fact that this is a huge issue, especially for families and Africans that come from outside of the country and they bring their kids in, and they don't really understand that importance of being visible in the school, engaging the school. And sometimes their children, out of frustration, say things to people in pastoral care because they see that dichotomy in how they are raised and how the school is treating them. And when parents are not engaged and know what's going on, we have had situations where, in the UK, the children are not seen as belonging to the parents. They're seen as belonging to their wards, their citizens. So they will just step in to protect that citizen of the United Kingdom, not first the parent. And so many children have been taken out of homes, African homes, and part of it is parents are not as engaged to understand how things operate, how the school sees things. So I just wanted to add that point to what Susie was saying, and really what Suzette was also saying as well.
Yeah, thank you, Nike. And that's a segue to the next question. Like, I would like to ask both of you to tell us, what is the role of parents in public school education? How can parents navigate the public school, work with the teachers, and how can parents have a voice in the public school system? And in addition to that, what do you think parents should be in charge of, for example, have a say in the curriculum choice that the school provides? And I'm going to give an example that just happened I think recently in Maryland, where the one of the counties just introduced some curriculum, and they're saying parents don't have a say to opt out of that curriculum. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. So two questions. The first is, what is the role of parents in the public school system? How can parents have a voice? And then the second one is, do you think parents should be in charge, or maybe should parents have a say in the curriculum choices that schools provide? I'll start with you, Ms. Tom.
Thank you. I have a question for the panel and the group and anyone, on YouTube and in cyber world. And my question to Tutu's question is, would you take your car to Amico or the car repair shop, NTW, and they charge you $1,500 worth of work and expect your car not to run?
Absolutely not.
It should fly like the space shuttle, right?
Absolutely not, right? Exactly.
So my question then to the group is, why is it in education? It's the only entity. You wouldn't go to the hospital, the dentist, your gynecologist, and not get positive results. Education is the only entity or discipline where you as taxpayers, in some places, put in 50% of your paycheck, 30% in property taxes to the school system, and not expect positive results back, if that makes sense. So you're paying into a system that you should have a say in how it's done, who's running it. If in the chat somebody can respond to the question, who is the Maryland State Superintendent of Schools? If anybody in the panel knows, you can even Google it, folks at home. The Maryland State Superintendent of Schools. That's the person that runs the whole show, gets all the monies in the state of Maryland from Governor Moore, right? He gets his marching orders, passes it down to the school districts, passes it down to the principals, passes it down to the schools, to the school teachers, to the coaches, to the administrators, to the business manager. So if you're putting into this system, you have a say, you have a voice. Many school districts ascribe to the restorative justice format or restorative practices, community circles where students have a voice, right? So you as a parent also have that parental voice in influencing what is being taught, whether it's your health curriculum. I teach in one of the largest school districts in the state of Maryland. And a few years ago, a group of parents got together and shared their concerns about the health education curriculum. And within a few sessions and a stroke of the pen, the curriculum was changed, right? Or adapted to meet the needs of the group. So I empower parents, I empower the community, I empower the youth to share what you want. In the private chat, I dropped the blueprint .marylandpubliceducation.org. I encourage our listeners to go to https blueprint.marylandschools.org. Over the course of the next 10 years, the state of Maryland is going to be spending close to $4 billion with a B like Beyonce, all right, dollars in education. That goes for health education. It goes for your math curriculum. It goes for English. I remember back in the day, we were whole or phonics, and then we went to whole language, and then we went to all these different things. So pull up a chair to the table when these conversations are being had. Share your concerns at the school board meeting, at the PTA meeting. I think the pandemic has allowed us, if you can't get there, they will bring it to you. Thus, we're on this awesome StreamYard platform. Send a letter, send an email, send a text. I love the term pastoral care. In the American school system, we call it your trusted adult, right? That person, that confidant, that can be the liaison between home and school. So yes, parents, you do have an influence, you do have a say. There's parts of the curriculum where you can opt out, and I believe to what Tutu was speaking to, this particular new curriculum that's coming out has concerns. But as a classroom teacher, I would love for folks to be as concerned about your math curriculum, about the science curriculum, about different groupings, how students are grouped in the classroom, who's in front of the classroom, right? And then the message that's being brought. Again, it goes back to communicating. These are our family values. This is what we believe in. These are the expectations. I love that Susie mentioned about family expectation. I come from a Guyanese family. Guyana, little small country, northeastern tip of South America, the only English-speaking country in South America. And you better be sure that everyone under the Tom household knew that education was first and foremost. The schools should be a place to supplement what is already being taught or what the kids are bringing to the school door, to the bus stop, to the playing field. Shouldn't be the first time your child sees the color red and then wants it to be pink or other things, right? Red is red, green is green. So yes, parents are empowered. They are encouraged to speak as a group, as a collective. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, as we know. And wholeheartedly, as Susie said, the teachers need your help, right? The burnout is unbelievable. Again, the trickle-down effect from the governor and all the powers that be, it does hit the classroom in different aspects, not just from the student standpoint, but from the staff and the administrators as well.
I mean, powerful. I just wanted to say that part of what frustrates me, and I know you said we have to come as a group, what frustrates me is how divided we are. Even faith-based people cannot even get on the same page to even fight on the same playing field for us to. So I think that a lot of times they're playing on our, division. They're playing on our confusion. For instance, the program that the new thing that they're doing, whereby some faith-based kids cannot even opt out of, even faith-based people cannot even get on the same page for us to be united and say, we're not going to stand for this, and we don't think this should be passed into the school system. So that's part of my frustration, So how do you work together to be unified?
And if I can even add to that, and it would be interesting to hear what Susie thinks also from the UK, because I think the culture in the UK is very different from the culture in the US, actually. I think the US, to a large extent, was designed for parents to be more empowered as a group. For the UK, we don't even have that kind of rallying cause. But to Tosin's point, there's also that element of and I think it's what we've all said, sometimes there's this weariness, so to speak, so I'm curious, both of you, that, when you guys stand on the school side, what do you hear? I'm sure you hear stuff from the principals, there's stuff they tell you, is there messaging at times from public schools that almost tells you as educators to be prepared when parents come and they challenge certain things, that we parents don't know, or can you say that really if you have XYZ as parents or you do XYZ, you're able to get, your voice across? And this is something like Tosin said, parents don't even know how to galvanize as well. I don't know, this is just my thoughts on back of what Tosin said. And it's open to you guys. Yeah.
I think what I would say to your question is, one of the things that comes to mind is my people perish for lack of knowledge. And I think a lot, from my observation and my experience, there are lots of knowledge out there about the school systems that parents are not aware of. And part of it, I think, is because parents don't know where to find that information, or the other groups that we could use, such as church groups, they don't have, and they don't disseminate that information, or like groups of parents don't discuss those things sometimes. So in terms of whether or not we are trained in a certain way, yes, we are in some places where how to deal with questions from parents. But there's no blueprint that says that the school is always right. There's some places where a parent will challenge a school and we will back down, for lack of a better word, because that parent is right. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Suspensions, or what some people call exclusions. So we know that Black children have a higher rate of suspension, for example, Black boys especially. But the thing is, once a child is suspended, very few parents actually challenge that decision. But you can actually challenge, because there are parameters, there's a policy, there are things that the school could have done to support that child, and as a last resort, maybe the suspension. But even with a suspension, what support is there from the borough or from the outside agencies? And a lot of times, if you don't get asked that question as a school, then the suspension is upheld. But sometimes you just think parents don't know what to ask, and therefore sometimes the support that can be given is not there. So I guess that's what I'd say to your question. But in terms of what parents can do, and whether they have a say within the school, one of the things that parents can do is become part of the local governing body. Because the governing body, it has a parent, or it has at least a parent. And when the governing body is sitting down, they're the ones who will be part of hiring the senior leadership of a school, the principal. They're part of the value system. They question the senior leadership of a school. So if you don't have your own representative to talk about these things, then nobody will say it. So for example, if there's no diversity, we're not enough parents or Black people specifically in our local governing bodies for schools. And that's really key. And the only way you do that is literally just apply. When you apply, then you're considered. But the other thing is, we have a lot of parents who have a lot to offer. They don't come in, but they can come in, and do assemblies. You want to come and do an assembly for, talk about your own experience, maybe somewhere, or you know something. We have a lot of expertise within our parent bodies, but we don't approach the school to say, by the way, I can offer this, I can come and speak to the students about this. You know, those are some of the opportunities. In terms of the curriculum, same thing. When in the UK, in year 9, 8, 9, they choose their subjects. A lot of times we will tell the parents to come and help the child choose, but the parent has a lot of say there. They'll come in and say, okay, I want my child to become this, and I've discussed with my child this, and then you guide that child. Because if you leave it to the school, I might decide that your child is not suitable to do triple science because triple science is full, the class is full. If I'm not challenged, that might pass. You know,
Wow.
if you challenge me and I'll say, okay, yeah, actually, I'll consider. The setting, is your child in a top set or what we call a bottom set? And why are they in that bottom set? Is it because of behavior? Because if it is because of behavior, it's wrong. It should be because of ability. And even in that ability, they should be able to be supported by specific teachers. What about the extracurricular activity that is offered? Is your child part of that? So parents have a lot of power if they question what is going on within the schools. And for me, that's why I always say, ask. Get yourself, read the policies of the school, ask the tough questions, because you'll get the answer you need.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you so much. There's a lot packed in there. Oh, Suzette wants to say something.
Yes, thank you, Susie, for bringing up my passion in terms of extracurriculars, right? And it's more than just the football pitch or the basketball team. It's what's going on in the community, what outside groups, because to be honest with you, family, education is a business, right? And we're going to push these folks through, whether it's, they can read or don't read or can spell, etc. Right? Even the average adult is reading on a 6th grade reading level. The Washington Post, any of our major newspapers are on a middle school reading level. So as Susie mentioned, what outside groups? Because if you're depending on Miss Susie or Mr. Johnson or Miss Tom to give you all, that's not going to happen, right? So as she mentioned, empowering those in your community who own their own business, right? A young person who is an entrepreneur, bringing them back in, running an after-school program, a workshop. I know a gentleman out of Washington, D.C., who is a returning citizen, was empowered while he was doing, the work that he needed to do, and now has created a debate group. So those opportunities where, students may have quote unquote anger issues or can't really express themselves. No, they're not going to express it in the 11th grade English lit class, but after school, they may be able to share and bring about, what's internally, going on with them and can share that information. Back to, again, Susie's point about the community, about the voice, about attending. If the school system, can't handle that challenge, then go and find those outside resources. They say, there's different places that are available where you can host groups on your own, create workshops, vacation Bible school, Saturday school, multiple opportunities to educate, and not just what's happening at PS 161 or XYZ, high school.
Thank you for that. One thing you said that I caught, and I'm glad I saw a comment too in the chat when you said education is a business. One of our viewers echoed the same. And so it's so important for us as parents to really, really be involved and get engaged in what's going on in the schools. So this brings me to my next question. So what can parents do when their children are being actively expected to participate in classes or activities that go against their belief systems.
Do you want anyone else to answer?
Can I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, so yeah, one of the things I would say is that read the policies that come with specific things that you don't agree with. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, in primary school, there is something called relationships education. That is supposed to be taught in primary school. The sex education part is not compulsory. It's recommended by the government that that is taught in primary, but it's not compulsory. So what that means is that you don't have to have your child doing that. Some schools will teach sex education in primary school, although it's not compulsory, but the head teacher and the school are supposed to withdraw your child if you want that to happen. So the policy that they have, you can go to them and you can say, I know relationship education you need, my child has to do it, because it encompasses a lot of other things that are really, really good, actually. You know, adolescent, puberty, growing up, how to keep safe. But if you don't want the sex education element, you can just go to the primary school head and they should not teach your child that. In secondary, the sex education part supposed to be and although it's supposed to be taught, again, you can't withdraw your child from the relationship part of it, but you can withdraw your child from the sex education part of it by going in, discussing it with the pastoral team, saying what it is, because the school is meant to look at who they're serving. So, for example, you find some schools in the UK that are in largely faith-based areas, so where there are lots of maybe Muslim communities or Christian communities, and they teach based on with the awareness of who their target market is, who their child, the student is, and who the family is. And it has to be age appropriate. So although there's a reason that relationship and sex education is taught, there are boundaries with which, if you don't feel comfortable, you can go in and you can discuss that, and you can withdraw certain parts of your child not being taught by someone else. And what I'd say is that as long as, so for example, if I was taught sex education by my mom before the teacher, puberty by my mom, by my aunties. So maybe you have that already at home. There are those values that you're doing. Go to school and just talk to them about it, because you can't avoid the fact that, you know, there are same-sex relationships, for example, gender identity, all those things are now, they're current, but it doesn't mean that your child has got to be part of that discussion to a point where you're uncomfortable. So approaching the school, knowing the policy, and being vocal about what it is and insisting what is it that they're teaching actually. So yes, I'm saying sex education, but what is that teacher? What's in that curriculum? What exactly is my child being told? Teachers have a duty. It's the curriculum. We will share it with you when you ask. We may not if you don't ask, because, you know, there are many people who are fine with it, but when you ask, we will give you that, and you can withdraw your child.
Thank you. Suzette, I'd like to hear your opinion on this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Susie. You know, I go to the good book, seek and ye shall find. Ask the questions. But more importantly, and to increase and elevate what Susie has shared, is ask your child. They're in the class every day. They are the ones who have to go through this experience, you know, all through 4 years of high school, middle school, having those courageous conversations early and age appropriate. What do you know? What have you heard? We get all in an uproar, I find, as adults, when it comes to topics that we may not feel comfortable with, or it doesn't ascribe under our family values. Make sure that's being reinforced. Our families are very different, so the values in dad's home, if mom and dad are separate, may be different than what's happening in mom's home or the stepmother's home. So as an adult community, are we all under one accord? Are we following the same word? Your child knows a lot more, I believe, than we give them credit for, because we don't always ask them. Again, I grew up in a Guyanese household. Children were seen and not heard, right? So as in the Black, African, Caribbean, Latino community, we tend to put our children in certain places beneath us until we give them the information. Whereas when they go out into the world, they're elevated. And many times, especially in some of our communities where children are coming from Pakistan and India and Ukraine, they're coming with all different types of information and expectations, right? So finding out, yes, what's happening in the community. I know in the state of Maryland, when it comes to health education, every fall, every spring, there's a meeting at the beginning of the school. This is the curriculum. This is the books and the materials that will be taught and how it's going to be taught. Everything is scripted. But I think a deeper conversation can be had with your child, because again, they're the ones going through the experience. We may be having our own flashbacks, okay? Not all of us may have had the experience of having somebody, an auntie, an older cousin, to give us the birds and the bees and how this works and what this does, is what is it meaning to them, right? Joshua, when you're going to sit in this class or listen to this workshop, are you trying to be an ally? Are you trying to be a helpful person to someone you know, a best friend that you have that may be going through something? So I think there's an opportunity many times for us as the adults, the caretakers, the aunties, the uncles, the grandparents, to tap into their minds. You know, what are you listening to? What are you hearing? What concerts are you going to? What movies are they watching? Because a lot of this, you know, yes, it comes to the front door at PS 161 and XYZ High School, but they know a whole lot more and have experienced a whole lot more on their ears, on their screen time, what movies they go to visit, so-and-so, who are they visiting, you know, having that open communication also with other parents. I tell it all the time. I was almost in high school before I went to a sleepover, because, you know, that we just didn't do that in our family. So the cultural conditioning, what's happening current 2023 in Prince George's County Public Schools, Harford County Public Schools, you know, on the Eastern Shore, is happening worldwide, as Susie, you know, the racial components. That's another aspect that we tend to kind of shy away from. But it's right front and center of being dealt with. And if we as a community, as a people, don't find the ways to put our differences aside, our fearful or unknown expectations or things we think we know, but we really don't, then we get into this spiraling and then want to start pointing fingers of who's not doing what. I think as long as we're taking care of home, kids know who they are, what we expect, and they may still go the wayside, and there may be someone who can shepherd them in, and it doesn't always have to be mom, dad, the teacher, but somebody else who can reach them. I think that's very powerful.
That's awesome. I just want to, I totally agree with everything that you both of you are saying. And I just want to share an example. Most of the time when things are, you know, the laws are being passed or they are being raised as to how it affects the public school system, you know, most of the people will comment and say homeschooling or faith-based education, you know, and all of that. But I agree with you in terms of everyone can't have the money to take their children to private schools or to Christian schools. You know, everyone can't do that. For instance, okay, all our children are in private Christian schools, but my daughter is she's in a university now, and it's not, you know, Christian based. And there's a class she has to take called Psychology of Gender. And I was hesitant when she told me that she wanted to sign up for the class and everything. But then I said, you know what? Because I spoke to her dad, and I'm like, We have raised this girl on her value systems, okay, based on faith. And so every day I'm talking to her about the class. What are they teaching you about the class? You do know that there are only two, based on what I know, there are only two genders. And I'll say what I believe in, and I'm like, what is this teacher saying and all of that? And she downloads everything. So I agree with you in the sense that talk to your child. If you can't take your child from public school and they're forcing your child to be in curriculums or programs that you don't align with your value system, you need to constantly be talking to your child, laying your foundation, laying your value systems and what they need to understand as to what is true and what is, based on what you believe in, instead of them just binding to what they're being told. But that is you being intentional. That is with you being in their faces constantly and not just thinking that, oh, they'll understand and all of that. So she's 20 and I'm talking to her every day about the class. Tell me what they taught you to do. Tell me what, the professor said. I'm being intentional about that. And so I implore parents, please listen to the show. Be intentional. If you can't take your children homeschool, you can't do homeschool, you can't take them, stick to making sure you're in their faces, putting your value system and your standpoint and what, God has told you to do for your children. So I just wanted to add that.
And Tosin, just to piggyback off of that, be intentional, but also be open, giving them the space to figure it out and navigate as they go along. I tell the story, and I've told my nieces and nephews, I was that 10-year undergrad, right? It took me 10 years to get my bachelor's, but once I got it, boom, it was master's. And I kind of found my way. I was that traveling niece that, wandering in and out aunt. I was up and down the East Coast. But once you find and you have that foundation, and then you can start to pick and choose what relationships to get into, which ones to stay away from, what, a good job or housing, or just having that experience in their toolkit makes a world of difference. So yes, we want to enforce and empower, but giving them the space for however long, they might be 32 years old, sleeping on your couch, still trying to figure it out, as long as you have that patience to help them navigate it and figure it out. And when they do fall and skin their knees, I'm the prodigal daughter. I'll put it out there in the World Wide Web. So once you figure it out, then it's all systems say go.
And I'll just, I was going to say this after what Tosin said, but I think Suzette, you put it perfectly in terms of, we are still, when we bring our faith perspective to this, there is an ongoing requirement for us to also just pray. I know it might seem like, oh, it's obvious, but I just felt that it's so critical because, one of the things that I've come to learn is that, children, even we're really, obviously we're their wards, we call them our children, but we only have them for a short period of time, really. And at a particular age, you start to know that these individuals are very independent. In our Gen Z episode, they said, give us space to figure it out, and we all said, we really have to, go back and pray. And I feel that I would just personally say this, that there is a responsibility on us as faith-based parents to pray for our children's friends, to pray for their families, to pray that God opens their eyes, to pray for the local school down the road, to pray for light, because I feel that there is that engagement. There's a spiritual engagement that's going on. And the more, as we all know, that issues around gender identity is shocking that conversation is being started from children as young as 6 or even 5. They start the conversation. The teachers then want to advocate for them where they feel the parents have a different belief. And that's where, there's this quote unquote war zone thing happening, so we can't overemphasize the fact that, our children, praise God for them, and what we teach them are instruments in God's hands. One of the stories I heard, and we all talk about this story a lot because we're passionate about it, is a child that was in a class and her friend said, there was another child in the class that said something about, she feels that she's my husband told me, so she feels that she's a cat or something funny. I can't remember what she was. They were talking about feeling and said, I'm a cat. And the friend said, you can't be a cat, you're a girl, and she was like, no, but I feel like, and I want to be one. And she said, well, but you are a girl, you can't. And in that moment, that child was speaking truth from the values. And the child was attacked. This made, some of these media was attacked by the teacher and said, you have no right. If she says she's a cat or whatever she wants to be, you don't have a right to tell her what she's not. But that little girl stood up and said, I was just saying to her, I don't see a cat, I see a girl. And so we've come to that phase where beyond all of this, I think, there's even a place where not only our children, are we raising up our children, I think God wants us to empower our children at a young age in their sweet nature to speak truth and to keep reminding and affirming and loving and praying and supporting our children when they do stand up for their values. And it's not easy, but I do think that that's where they are. Even our children need to be fortified to say what is right and to be backed up as well.
Nika, thanks for promoting our show on September 30 about the identity crisis.
Oh, thank you.
We'll be delving into that.
Thank you so much.
But thank you. I mean, how time flies. We've actually come to the end of today's show. I want to thank our guests, Susie and Suzette. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to our audience. I see our audience have been engaged, commenting in the chat. Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's always a pleasure to have you join us on My Take Show. Our next episode on When Life Happens series is on August 19th, and we'll be talking about understanding depression and how to deal with it. You don't want to miss this episode. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the notification bell so you can get reminders. We also encourage you to follow us on all our social media platforms. Thank you so much for joining. And until next time, it's goodbye from us.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.